In this video, I will be sharing 10 book recommendations on the books that helped me start on my healing journey. They helped me transform from someone who was incredibly anxious, shy, defensive, and scared to someone who's now really happy, really creative, and enjoying life. Hello and welcome to the channel. My name is Alessandra, and I very recently, last year I moved out of my family home due to a very difficult situation, and recently I left a toxic job. I have navigated this entire journey completely on my own, so these 10 books really saved me. If you want a bit of a quick start though, feel free to check out the link in bio where I've put together 26 words, vocab that I've learnt from these books that have helped me validate my experiences and understand my experiences. That's available now for £1.99, so go check that out. Right, let's jump into the books. So the first book that I would recommend is The 6 Pillars of Self-Esteem. I think that everyone should read this book. It made me analyze the relationship that I had with myself, and it made me understand ways in which I had low self-esteem and how to raise my self-esteem. To be honest, the concept of self-esteem is broken down into many different parts. It's broken down into self-love, self-assurance, and Nathaniel Branden explains it extremely well in this book. As I said, I think everyone in the world should read this book. It took me a long time to read. You can see all the notes, but it's what started me on the healing journey when I didn't even know that I needed to heal. The next book that I'm going to recommend actually is 2 books by Susan Forward. So after I read that book on self-esteem, I realized that I needed to analyze the relationships that had formed me, namely the relationships I had with my parents. First, I started with this book, Toxic Parents, and again, so many markers. You can see that in this book, again, so many markers. This book basically showed me what I was missing in my life growing up and what I should have had. So it made me learn to stop minimizing my experiences. It made me de-minimize my experiences and say, instead of saying to myself, oh, it's okay that I didn't have these things, I started saying, actually, it was really important that I lacked these things in my upbringing. And then it helped me learn how to reparent myself. And the same goes for this book as well. Both of these books, Mothers Who Can't Love, also taught me what I didn't have and how to reparent myself. It also helped me have more compassion for my mom. So now I'm in a place where, even though I have a difficult relationship with my family, I don't feel any resentment towards them anymore. Wow, gosh, I used to, but yeah, I don't anymore. Yeah, these books are great. And so these 2 books talk about what you didn't have, and I want to talk a bit about a book that teaches you what you could have. And that is this book by Esther Wojcicki. Her daughters are very successful people, and in this book she talks about how she raised them. So I really like this book because as I was reading it, I was like, I wish I'd had this support and nurturing growing up, and now I can implement those things in my life for myself. So this book is super transformative for people who've had difficult childhoods and who want to do better now. And it gives you kind of some sort of not coping strategies, but sort of nurturing strategies to help you nurture your inner child. So this is really good. And kind of aligned with that is also The Path to Purpose by William Damon. And this is a book, again, that's for parents. It teaches parents how to nurture their child's purpose. And it talks about how, you know, those children who you see who just have these incredible, what's the word, who just achieve amazing things from a very young age. Like they'll have big charity fundraisers. Those kinds of kids have a lot of support. They have a supportive environment, or at least they have one supportive adult. For me, adults used to always tell me what to do in my life. They didn't ever nurture what I wanted to do. So this book teaches you how to nurture your passions and how to reparent yourself. So this book's great. And it's quite a light read as well. This one's a bit heavier, this one's a bit lighter. So if you want something lighter, go for this. Okay, what's next? So we've blitzed through 5. The next book that I want to talk about is, let's see, there's a few heavier ones. Or should I start? I'm gonna save the best for last. Okay, so let's go on to a couple different ones. So, Positive Disintegration is fascinating. I have only read halfway through the book because it's very technical, but the best way I can describe it is when I was about 7 years old, I became awake. Now, I had been raised by a single mother, and my grandma and grandfather were both very unwell. My grandmother was paralyzed for 20 years, and my grandfather had Alzheimer's. At the age of around 7, when my grandfather died, I remember looking at myself in the mirror and suddenly being alive. I knew who I was, I knew what I wanted, and I didn't know in the tangible sense, like what success I wanted or what I wanted to do as a job. I just knew what my values were, and I knew who I wanted to be and how I wanted to interact with the world. And I assumed that if I just followed the life that my parents were telling, what that my mom was telling me, and doing the things that she wanted me to do, that I would become that person. But that didn't happen. And so this book kind of explains what I'm experiencing. This book isn't for everyone, and if you have no idea what I'm talking about, this might be totally go totally over your head. But if you kind of have an inkling of an understanding, this book could be really interesting for you. Part of the reason that I think I woke up and became conscious so early is because of my grandparents. I was in and out of the end of life ward at the hospital, and I saw a lot of what happens when you're older. Like, I just woke up and I understood the nature of life. And the reason that Dabrowski wrote this book is because he wanted to understand why people in the camps, in World War II, behaved differently. Like, some people, it completely broke their spirit and it ruined them. But for other people, they were able to get through it. And he wondered what was the difference between those two. So this book explains that. Right, enough of that. That was a lot. I want to talk about another book that's, again, a little bit heavy, but this book, I couldn't have read it straight away. I had to begin the healing journey with those books that I recommended before. But when I was ready, Complex PTSD, I have an inkling of a feeling that most people in the world have complex PTSD. If you ever get triggered, like if you get road rage, or if someone triggers you by what they say, you might have complex PTSD. Complex PTSD isn't like, it's not when you get flashbacks with visual imagery. It's more like when you get emotional flashbacks, like when your body reacts. And this is one of the words that's in my book. So if you check out the ebook, it goes into a bit more depth about this. But this book just helped me uncover what I was feeling in my body. This book made me cry. This book made me shift cry as well, which is something I'm going to add to my ebook. It helped me realize where the pain was sitting and where it had come from, and it helped me uncover memories. I don't know how it did it. I don't know if I did it or if it was the book, but it was just, sometimes when you read a book and it helps things shift in your mind. This is a deep book, and now as a result, I'm going to get EMDR, which is like somatic therapy, and hopefully that helps me unlock the next level. But yeah, I only read like half of the book so far because I've taken a bit of a reading break because I've read so much. All right, so what book are we on? So we have 3 more books to go, and I'm going to leave the best to last. But this book, so the next book is called The Expectation Effect. And this book is about mindset. It talks a bit about how when we think something is bad for us and we consume it, it has a worse effect on our body than if we think it's good for us. So for example, and this might not be in the book, but for example, if you think drinking is bad for you, it's more likely to affect your body negatively on the long term. If you think drinking is good for you, it might not. Obviously, there's limitations on all these things. If you drink yourself into a stupor every day, that's not going to be good for you. But it talks about, if you eat a hamburger and you think it's bad for you, like if you think having a cheat meal is bad for you, it's more likely to have a bad effect on you because of the stress it creates in the body. And so this talks all about like exercise, stress, sleep. The big thing it says, if you think you need a lot of sleep and you don't get it, that affects you more than if you don't think it matters at all. So, and it affects you on the long term too. So this is a really great book that shifted my mindset. Okay, so next book that I want to talk about. This is a book more about the world. So it's still about mindset, but it's about seeing the bigger picture. So I've still put this in the healing category in a sense because it helped me kind of understand the world that I'm living in and see the bigger picture. So I think that still plays into healing a little bit, although it's kind of on the outskirts, but it's a great book. The End of the World is Just the Beginning. This book talks all about supply chains, all about the way we operate. Like, how do I begin to explain it? So the best way I can explain it is I love sketching, right? And I bought this little book to to sketch away. Let me show you some of the. I went to Wimbledon and I drew some of the tennis players. But anyway, the reason I bring this up is because I always wondered, whenever I got a little book or whenever I bought myself something like this, how many people's hands has this book not been through, but how many people were needed for this book to be created? And I think the number is hundreds of thousands. Let me explain. Someone had to plant the tree, someone had to chop down the tree, several people had probably had to cut it into several parts, someone had to load it onto the lorry, someone had to drive the lorry to take it to the factory, someone had to own that factory, someone had to then buy the machines from someone else to process it into paper. I then had to walk into Waterstones where I found it, or actually there's so many more things, like, okay, process it into paper. There was a different person who had a company that made notebooks, and then that person employed people to source the paper, to source the designs, to create this notebook. He then had to negotiate with people to send it from China or wherever it was made to the UK. So he had to talk to the ship owners. There are hundreds, if not thousands, of people working on ships across the world. And then what about the people who regulate the ports and, all that? And then what else is there? They're going to say. And then, so eventually it gets to Waterstones where I buy it. But obviously someone had to build the Waterstones. Like, someone laid down the brick. Someone else built the shelves where I then found it. I then went to the till operator. In that whole journey, I have missed so many small steps, but there are hundreds of thousands of people who were there for this book to get in my hands. And that is what this book is all about. So check it out. Geopolitics, power, fuel, electricity, how the world operates. This is amazing. And the final book, I did say I'd leave the best to last, is The Artist's Way. I love this book because it's a 12-week course to help you unlock your creativity. Every week you read a little bit and then you do these exercises, and it's just really nurturing. It's really sweet. I did it this morning and I've been so productive. This is the book that makes you productive. If you want to be creative and productive in a productive way, I love this book. I literally just did the exercises this morning and I'm in such a good mood today. Just the two books that I would recommend are the first and the last. These, if anything resonated to you, please, please, please get these two books. Specifically, please, please, please get this book. This will change your life. So yeah, happy reading. Let me know how it goes and let me know what your book recommendations are for the healing journey. All right, that's all for now. See you in the next one.